The pug's newborn blinked, awake, aware, glowing. Dr. David whispered, "This can't be real," and the clinic lights instantly died. Who engineered something like this, and why inside Miley? Before we proceed, drop your locations in the comments right now, and when this story ends, rate it from 0 to 10. Set, let's dive in. Cara Hill had seen Miley pregnant before. Twice, in fact. Both times had been textbook, a modest swell, some nesting behavior, then for healthy puppies delivered without complications. This was nothing like that. Miley's belly had ballooned to an impossible size over the past 6 hours, stretching her tan and black fur so taut that Cara could see the outline of her ribs above the grotesque distension. The pug lay on the kitchen floor, panting in shallow, desperate bursts, her dark eyes wide with confusion and pain. "It's okay, girl. It's okay," Cara whispered, though her trembling hands betrayed the lie. Miley whined, a high, keening sound, and tried to drag herself toward the narrow space beneath the couch. Hiding. Animals only hid when they sensed something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Cara didn't hesitate. She scooped Miley into her arms, grabbed her keys, and ran. The rain hammered against the windshield as Cara pushed her sedan through the empty streets. Every red light felt like an eternity. Miley trembled in the passenger seat, her breathing ragged, her swollen stomach rising and falling in unnatural rhythms. "Hold on, baby. Just hold on." South Ridge Emergency Veterinary Hospital glowed like a beacon against the storm. Cara burst through the automatic doors, rainwater streaming from her jacket, Miley cradled against her chest. "I need help. Please, something's wrong with my dog." The reception area was sterile and blindingly bright, white walls, fluorescent lights, the sharp antiseptic smell that made her stomach clench. A nurse in blue scrubs appeared immediately, guiding Cara toward the back. Within minutes, Dr. David Rowan entered the examination room. He was in his early 40s, with graying temples and steady hands that moved with practiced efficiency. His eyes, however, were kind. Compassionate. The sort of eyes that had seen 1,000 emergencies and still cared about every single one. "Let's take a look," he said softly, placing his stethoscope against Miley's heaving chest. His expression shifted almost immediately. He pressed his hands gently along Miley's abdomen. Paused. Pressed again. His jaw tightened. "How long has she been like this?" 6 hours. Maybe less. It came on so fast. Dr. Rowan didn't respond. He gestured to the nurse. "Ultrasound. Now." They moved Miley onto the cold metal table beneath the imaging machine. The lights dimmed. The monitor flickered to life, casting eerie blue shadows across the room. Cara watched the screen, her pulse hammering in her ears. At first, there was only static, gray and white noise swirling like a storm. Then shapes began to emerge. 3 of them. But they weren't shaped like puppies. They were too angular. Too dense. Their outline shifted and pulsed in ways that made Cara's skin crawl. Dr. Rowan leaned closer to the screen. His face went pale. "What?" His voice was barely a whisper. The silence stretched, unbearable. Then he turned to Cara, his eyes wide, his calm professionalism cracking at the edges. "We need to deliver. Now." Before Cara could respond, something moved. Deep inside Miley's distended belly, something pushed, hard, against the veterinarian's hand. Dr. Rowan jerked back, his breath catching in his throat. And for the first time that night, Cara saw fear in his eyes. They moved fast. Dr. Rowan barked orders to the surgical team as they wheeled Miley through double doors marked Surgical Suite 2. Cara tried to follow, but a nurse gently but firmly guided her toward the observation window. "You'll be able to see everything from here," the nurse said. Kara pressed her palms against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. Beyond the window, the surgical room was painfully bright, overhead lights blazing down on the steel table where Miley now lay sedated. Monitors beeped steadily. Dr. Rowan scrubbed in, his movements efficient despite the tension radiating from his shoulders. He positioned himself beside Miley's swollen abdomen and made the first incision. Kara's stomach lurched. The surgical lights gleamed off the scalpel as Dr. Rowan worked with careful precision, parting layers of tissue. His assistant stood ready with clamps and suction. Everything looked routine. Until it wasn't. Dr. Rowan's hand slowed. His brow furrowed. What the hell? He reached inside and withdrew something. Not a puppy. A leathery sac, thick, translucent, veined with dark capillaries that pulsed rhythmically like a secondary heartbeat. The membrane moved. Contracted. Expanded. Breathing. Dr. Rowan laid it on the sterile tray and reached for the scalpel. He pressed the blade against the sac's surface. It resisted. He pressed harder, adjusting the angle. The membrane finally gave way with a wet, tearing sound. And then, a creature blinked up at him. Its eyes were fully open. Not the cloudy, unfocused gaze of a newborn, but sharp. Aware. Observing. Thin lines of metallic gold traced along its translucent skin like circuitry beneath flesh, glowing faintly in the surgical lights. The thing, it wasn't quite a puppy, turned its head toward Dr. Rowan with unsettling deliberation. The doctor stumbled backward, his gloved hands trembling. This can't be real. What? Kara's voice cracked against the glass. She pounded on the window. What is it? What's wrong? Dr. Rowan didn't answer. He couldn't. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. His assistant stood frozen, staring at the creature now squirming on the tray. Doctor, the assistant whispered. There's another one. Dr. Rowan forced himself back to the table. His hands moved mechanically as he delivered the second newborn, this one emerging without the sac, but covered in a slick membrane that revealed something far worse. Beneath its skin, metallic flecks glinted in perfect symmetrical patterns. Not random. Deliberate. Designed. The two creatures lay side by side on separate trays. And then they moved. Not randomly. Not independently. Together. Their heads turned in unison toward the same corner of the room. Their tiny limbs twitched in identical rhythms, left, right, left, like synchronized marionettes controlled by an invisible hand. Kara's breath hitched. David, what are those things? Dr. Rowan finally looked up at her through the glass. His face had drained of all color. I don't know. The words hung in the sterile air. Then, the overhead lights flickered. Once. Twice. The monitors glitched, their steady beeps stuttering into static bursts before stabilizing again. Dr. Rowan's eyes darted upward, then to the creatures on the trays. They were still staring at the corner of the room. Waiting. Dr. Rowan forced himself to breathe. To think. Whatever these things were, Miley was still his patient. He turned his attention back to the pug, now resting on the surgical table, her breathing shallow but stable. Let me check her over, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He ran his gloved fingers along Miley's abdomen, feeling for complications, internal bleeding, anything that might explain what had just happened. His hand paused near her lower ribcage. There was something there. A ridge. Faint, but distinct. He parted the tan fur carefully, angling the overhead light for a better view. A scar. Thin as a thread, perfectly straight, nearly invisible against her skin. It was surgical. Precise. Professional. Kara, he called toward the observation window. "Has Miley ever had surgery before?" Kara's voice came through the intercom, shaky and confused. "No. Never. Just her spay years ago, but that scar's on her belly, not. This isn't from a spay." Dr. Rowan grabbed a scalpel and made a small incision along the scar line. The tissue parted easily, as if it had been opened before. And there, embedded deep within the muscle, a metallic object. Small. Cylindrical. No larger than a grain of rice. His assistant leaned closer. "What is that?" "I don't know." Dr. Rowan extracted the object with surgical tweezers and held it up to the light. It gleamed dully, etched with microcircuitry too fine to read with the naked eye. Kara's voice exploded through the intercom. "What is that? What did you just pull out of my dog?" "An implant." Dr. Rowan's voice was tight. "Someone put this inside her." "That's impossible." She's never been out of my sight except for." Kara's voice faltered. Dr. Rowan didn't press her. He crossed to the diagnostic scanner mounted on the counter and dropped the implant into the tray. The machine hummed to life, its screen flickering with cascading data. Then it glitched. Lines of code scrolled too fast to follow. The screen flashed red, then blue, then settled into a garbled mess of symbols and fragmented text. Dr. Rowan's assistant stepped beside him, squinting at the display. "Is it encrypted?" "Heavily." Dr. Rowan tapped the screen, trying to isolate readable fragments. Most of it was gibberish, strings of alphanumeric sequences that meant nothing. But then, buried in the noise, a single phrase unscrambled itself. "Series 4 Adaptive Prototypes." Dr. Rowan felt the blood drain from his face. "Prototypes," he whispered. "What does that mean?" Kara demanded through the intercom. He turned toward the observation window, his expression hollow. "It means someone used your dog as a test subject." Kara's scream was muffled by the glass, but the anguish was unmistakable. Dr. Rowan staggered back from the scanner, his mind racing. Adaptive prototypes. Biotech implants. The metallic patterns beneath the newborn skin. None of this was natural. None of this was an accident. This was deliberate. Behind him, the assistant gasped. "Doctor?" Dr. Rowan turned. The two newborns had moved again. Their heads swiveled in perfect unison, turning toward the far corner of the surgical room. Not toward Miley. Not toward humans. Toward the corner. Empty space. Their glowing veins pulsed brighter. "What are they looking at?" the assistant whispered. Dr. Rowan didn't answer. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the creatures. And then, the newborns began to hum. A low, synchronized tone that resonated through the air like a tuning fork. The sound wasn't loud, but it vibrated through everything, the trays, the surgical instruments, the metal table beneath them. The frequency climbed higher. The table began to rattle. Dr. Rowan stumbled backward, his pulse hammering in his ears. "What the hell are they doing?" The humming stopped as abruptly as it began. Silence crashed back into the surgical room, broken only by the steady beep of Miley's heart monitor. Kara burst through the door, ignoring the nurse's protests. Her eyes were wild, tear-streaked, but fixed on the two creatures lying on the trays. "I need to see them," she whispered. Dr. Rowan stepped aside, too shaken to argue. Kara approached slowly, her hands trembling. She stopped a few feet from the trays, her breath catching in her throat. The newborns turned their heads. Not randomly. Together. Tracking her. Their eyes, copper gold and far too aware, followed her every movement with unnerving precision. Not the unfocused wandering of newborns learning to see. This was deliberate. Calculating. They're watching me, Kara breathed. I know. Dr. Rowan's voice was hollow. He forced himself to move closer, his clinical instincts kicking in despite the surreal horror of it all. He checked their vitals with a handheld scanner, noting their temperature, respiratory rate, muscle tone. Everything was wrong. They should be weak, he muttered. Newborns can barely lift their heads. They can't regulate their body temperature. They can't. One of the creatures shifted, pushing itself upright on wobbling legs. It shouldn't have been able to do that. Dr. Rowan stumbled backward. That's impossible. They were born 15 minutes ago. The second creature followed suit, rising shakily but with growing stability. The two stood facing each other on their respective trays, less than 3 feet apart. And then they stared at each other. Not blinking. Not moving. Just staring. They're communicating, Kara whispered. That's ridiculous. Look at them. Dr. Rowan fell silent. The creatures' gazes locked. Their heads tilted in mirrored angles. One lifted its right paw. The other lifted its left. Perfect synchronization. Then, the first creature began to glow. Faint at first, just a shimmer along the metallic veins beneath its skin. But the light intensified, pulsing in a steady rhythm. 1 beat. 2 beats. 3. The second creature responded immediately, its own veins igniting with a different rhythm, faster, overlapping the first in a complex pattern that resembled Morse code. Jesus Christ, Dr. Rowan breathed. They're signaling. Kara's voice cracked. What are they saying? I don't know. But this, he gestured helplessly at the creatures. This is engineered. Adaptive coordination. They said Series 4. There were 3 other versions before this. Kara wrapped her arms around herself, shaking. How? When? Miley's been with me every day except. She stopped. Except what? 3 weeks ago. I had a double shift at the hospital. 12 hours. I left her with my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. When I picked her up, Miley seemed off. Quiet. She wouldn't eat that night. Dr. Rowan's jaw tightened. Someone took her. Operated on her. Put those things inside her. And returned her before you noticed. That's insane. The lights flickered. Both of them froze. The overhead surgical lights dimmed, brightened, then dimmed again. The monitors stuttered, their displays glitching momentarily before stabilizing. Power surge, the assistant suggested weakly. Dr. Rowan didn't answer. His eyes were on the newborns. They had stopped glowing. Now they were both staring at the same spot again, the corner of the room. Their bodies tensed, muscles coiling beneath translucent skin. The lights flickered again. Longer this time. The beeping monitors slowed. And then, everything went dark. The surgical lights died. The monitors went black. The hum of machinery wound down into nothingness. Emergency backup power should have kicked in immediately. It didn't. In the suffocating darkness, Kara's voice trembled. David. Don't move. The silence pressed in from all sides, absolute and wrong. And in that silence, 2 pairs of glowing eyes blinked open on the surgical trays. Watching. Waiting. The emergency backup lights kicked in 30 seconds later. But they weren't the bright fluorescents that should have illuminated the clinic. Instead, dim red lights mounted near the floor flickered to life, casting the surgical room in a crimson glow that made everything look like a crime scene. Dr. Rowan moved to his computer terminal in the corner, jiggling the mouse. The screen remained black. Come on, he muttered, pressing the power button. Nothing. He tried the surveillance monitor mounted on the wall, the one that cycled through feeds from the parking lot, waiting room, and hallways. Dead. Not just off. Completely dead. No standby light. No hum of electronics. The whole system's down, he said. Everything. Not just the lights. Kara's voice came from the darkness near the surgical trays. How is that possible? It's not. We have redundancies. Battery backups. Unless... He stopped. Outside, through the observation window, headlights swept across the parking lot. Dr. Rowan moved to the glass, pressing his face close. A vehicle rolled into view, a black SUV with dark-tinted windows. No license plates. No markings of any kind. It stopped directly in front of the main entrance. 3 men emerged. They wore tactical gear, black fatigues, Kevlar vests, communication headsets. But no insignia. No badges. No agency identification. One of them carried a large metallic case, thermal insulated, with heavy-duty latches. A containment unit. Kara appeared beside Dr. Rowan, her face pale in the red emergency lighting. She watched the men approach the clinic entrance with mechanical precision. "They're coming for them," she whispered. Dr. Rowan's mind raced. The implant. It had to have a tracker. A signal. When I extracted it, when the scanner activated. You told them where we are. I didn't know. It doesn't matter. Kara's voice hardened. What do we do? Behind them, the newborns began to tremble. Not the helpless shaking of frightened animals. This was different. Controlled. Their glowing veins pulsed faster, brighter, the rhythms accelerating into something almost frantic. They knew. Somehow, they knew the agents were here. Dr. Rowan turned back to the window. The men had reached the front entrance. One of them knelt beside the electronic lock, producing a compact device from his tactical vest. He attached it to the door mechanism. The device hummed, a high-pitched whine that grew louder even through the reinforced glass. What is that? Kara breathed. Dr. Rowan didn't answer. He was already moving, grabbing Miley's sedated form from the surgical table, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. We need to go. Now. The assistant was frozen by the door, staring at the surveillance monitor as if willing it back to life. They cut the power, Dr. Rowan snapped. They cut everything. This was planned. Outside, the cutting device flared white-hot. The first lock began to glow, red, then orange, then white. Molten metal dripped onto the pavement. Kara scooped up one of the newborns, cradling it against her chest. It didn't resist. Its glowing eyes fixed on the direction of the entrance. Watching. Calculating. The lock gave way with a sharp crack. And the door began to open. The door slammed open. 3 agents stormed through, weapons raised, compact tactical rifles with mounted flashlights that cut through the red emergency glow like knives. Secure the specimens, the lead agent barked into his headset. Recover the prototypes. Neutralize everyone else. Dr. Rowan's blood ran cold. Neutralize. On the surgical table, Miley stirred. The sedation should have kept her under for another hour, but somehow she was fighting through it. Her legs trembled as she tried to stand, her lips curling back in a weak but defiant growl. Protecting her young. Even now. The newborns reacted instantly. Their glowing veins flared brilliant gold, so bright that Dr. Rowan had to shield his eyes. The light pulsed in rapid, frantic rhythms, no longer the slow, measured signals from before. This was panic. Or preparation. One of the newborns opened its mouth and screamed. Not a cry. Not a whimper. A sharp, piercing frequency that stabbed through Dr. Rowan's skull like an ice pick. He stumbled, pressing his hands over his ears, but it did nothing. The sound bypassed his eardrums, vibrating directly through his bones. The other two newborns joined in. The harmonized shriek became unbearable. Around the room, everything electronic exploded. The heart monitor burst in a shower of sparks. The surgical lights shattered, raining glass onto the floor. The computer terminal erupted in flames, its screen cracking outward like a spiderweb. Metal trays clattered to the ground, vibrating so violently they dented the tile. The agents screamed. They dropped to their knees, clawing at their helmets, trying to rip off the communication headsets that were amplifying the frequency directly into their ears. One agent's visor cracked. Another collapsed entirely, convulsing. Go! Dr. Rowan roared over the chaos. He scooped up the two newborns still on the trays, wrapping them hastily in surgical blankets. Kara already had the third cradled against her chest. His assistant grabbed Miley, the pug barely conscious but alive. They ran. Through the surgical room. Into the hallway. Sparks rained from overhead fixtures as the frequency continued to pulse through the building's electrical system, frying everything in its path. Behind them, one of the agents staggered to his feet, ripping off his helmet and raising his weapon. Stop! Dr. Rowan didn't look back. The rear exit was ahead, a heavy metal door marked emergency only. He slammed into the push bar with his shoulder. The door swung open. Rain poured down beyond it, cold and violent. The storm had intensified. Dr. Rowan took one step forward. And froze. A figure stood in the doorway. Silhouetted against the rain, backlit by distant lightning. Another agent. Taller than the others. Broad-shouldered. Holding something in his hand that wasn't a weapon. A scanner. It beeped steadily, the screen glowing green. The agent's voice was calm. Cold. You're not going anywhere. The newborns in Dr. Rowan's arms began to glow brighter. Preparing. The agent smiled. Good. That makes this easier. Miley moved before anyone else could react. Despite the sedation still clouding her system, despite the surgical trauma her body had just endured, the pug limped forward. Her legs trembled with each step, but her head was high, ears pinned back. She positioned herself between the agent and her newborns. Growling. The agent's smile faltered. Get the dog out of. He didn't finish. The three newborns moved as one. They shifted in their blankets, their small bodies aligning in perfect geometric formation, one at the apex, two forming a base. Their glowing veins pulsed in synchronized waves, building in intensity until the light was almost blinding. Dr. Rowan felt it before he heard it. A pressure in his chest. A vibration deep in his bones. Get down, he screamed. The newborns released. Not a sound this time. A pulse. A shockwave of pure vibrational energy that rippled outward in concentric waves, visible as distortions in the air like heat shimmer. It slammed into everything simultaneously. The remaining emergency lights exploded in sequence, pop pop pop, raining red glass and sparks. The walls cracked. The metal door frame buckled inward with a screech of tortured steel. The agent never had a chance. The pulse hit him full force. His scanner shattered in his hand. His body lifted off the ground and slammed backward into the exterior wall. He crumpled to the pavement, convulsing, blood streaming from his ears and nose. The back door, already damaged from the pulse, swung violently open. Rain poured through the opening, horizontal sheets driven by howling wind. Water flooded across the floor, mixing with glass and debris. Now! Dr. Rowan grabbed Kara's arm. They ran out into the storm. The cold rain hit like needles, instantly soaking through their clothes. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the parking lot in stark white flashes. Dr. Rowan's assistant carried Miley, the pug too weak to run on her own. Kara clutched one newborn. Dr. Rowan had the other two bundled against his chest. Behind them, shouting erupted from inside the clinic. The other agents were recovering. Which way? Kara screamed over the storm. Dr. Rowan pointed toward the tree line beyond the parking lot. The woods. They can't track us in. An engine roared to life. The black SUV's headlights flared, cutting through the rain. Tires screeched as it spun around, accelerating toward them. Run! They sprinted across the parking lot. Thunder crashed overhead, so loud it felt like the sky was tearing apart. The SUV closed the distance fast, too fast. Kara's foot caught on the curb. She stumbled, nearly dropping the newborn. Dr. Rowan grabbed her, hauling her upright. Keep moving. The tree line was 30 feet away. 20. 10. The SUV's engine screamed behind them, its headlights throwing their shadows long and distorted across the wet pavement. They crashed into the woods. Branches tore at their clothes and faces. The ground was slick with mud and leaves. Dr. Rowan risked a glance back. The SUV skidded to a stop at the edge of the parking lot. Doors flew open. Dark figures emerged, silhouetted against the headlights. And they were running. Chasing them into the dark. The wood swallowed them whole. Branches clawed at their faces. Roots tried to trip them with every step. The rain turned the ground into treacherous mud that sucked at their shoes. Kara's arms burned. Miley was heavier than she looked, especially limp and sedated. The newborn in her other arm squirmed occasionally, its warmth seeping through the damp towel. I can't, she gasped. I can't keep this pace. You have to. Dr. Rowan's voice was rough, breathless. He carried the other two newborns bundled against his chest, his assistant somewhere behind them in the darkness. The newborns began to hum. Softly at first. A gentle vibration that resonated through Kara's chest where she held one pressed against her. The sound wasn't aggressive like before, it was soothing. Rhythmic. Almost like a lullaby. Miley's trembling eased. Her breathing steadied. Kara felt her own panic recede, just slightly. The terror was still there, but the edges had dulled. What are they doing? She whispered. Dr. Rowan glanced at the glowing bundle in his arms. The light pulsed gently through the fabric, steady, calming waves. Biological influence, he murmured. The vibrations, they're affecting our nervous systems. Pain management. Stress reduction. They're engineered for survival, not just their own. They're helping us. They need us alive. Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the trees. Voices shouted commands, but the words were garbled, distorted by bursts of static. Subjects located, KZZT, Northeast Sector, KZZT. The radios kept failing. Shorting out. The newborn's presence was disrupting them. Kara stumbled over a fallen log, nearly dropping Miley. Dr. Rowan caught her arm, steadying her. How do we escape this? Her voice cracked. They have vehicles, helicopters, weapons. We survive, Dr. Rowan said, his eyes hard, because we weren't supposed to know. We weren't supposed to be witnesses. That makes us dangerous to them. That's not reassuring. A sound cut through the storm. Whop 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 whop. Rotor blades. Dr. Rowan's head snapped upward. Through the canopy, a blinding spotlight pierced the darkness, sweeping across the treetops in methodical patterns. A helicopter. The beam swung toward them. Move! They dove behind a massive oak as the spotlight blazed overhead, turning night into day. The trees threw stark shadows in every direction. The newborns' humming intensified. Their glow brightened. Preparing. The helicopter circled back, the spotlight locking onto their position. And descending. The drainage tunnel was barely wide enough for them to crawl through. Water dripped from the curved concrete ceiling, echoing in the darkness. The smell was musty, stagnant. But it was a shelter. Dr. Rowan led them deeper, away from the opening where the helicopter's searchlight continued to sweep the woods. His assistant collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. Kara sank down beside her, still cradling Miley and one of the newborns. The three newborns huddled together on the cold concrete. And hummed. The sound was different this time, lower, deeper, almost subsonic. The vibrations traveled through the tunnel walls, resonating outward in waves that Dr. Rowan could feel in his chest. Above them, the helicopter hovered. The spotlight moved back and forth, searching. Then it passed over their location. And kept going. Dr. Rowan held his breath. The helicopter circled once more, then banked away, its rotor noise fading into the storm. "They can't see us," Kara whispered. "How?" "The vibrations." Dr. Rowan stared at the newborns. "They're masking our heat signatures. Disrupting thermal imaging." He pulled the implant from his pocket, shining his flashlight on it. The microcircuitry glinted. He turned it over, squinting at markings he'd missed before. Etched along the edge in letters almost too small to read. Phase 1 complete. His blood turned to ice. Phase 1, he breathed. Kara looked up. "What does that mean?" "I don't know. But if this is Phase 1. He met her eyes. "What's Phase 2? The newborns shifted, clustering protectively around Miley. Their glow pulsed gently, illuminating their mother's exhausted face. Despite everything, the trauma, the terror, Miley's eyes were fixed on her young. Still protecting them. Dr. Rowan studied the creatures. They're designed for adaptation. Communication. Survival. But this level of sophistication, they're beyond any species I've ever encountered. Natural or otherwise. What are they?" Kara's voice trembled. "I don't know. But someone went to extraordinary lengths to create them." Kara pulled the newborn closer, her jaw tightening. "Then we protect them. Whatever it takes." Silence settled over the tunnel. Then, footsteps. Distant, but growing louder. Boots on wet pavement. Radio static crackling through the storm. The agents were regrouping. Searching systematically. Dr. Rowan killed his flashlight. In the darkness, the newborns lifted their glowing heads in unison. Their copper-gold eyes blinked slowly, ancient and aware, far too intelligent for creatures born mere hours ago. They turned toward the tunnel entrance. Watching. Waiting. Ready for whatever came next. The hunt had only just begun. Did this story captivate you? Share your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and tell us what you think. Smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you will never miss our next story.